Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? It's me, Paddy from across the shuck, and this is going to be a long one. So go and get a cup of tea, pause the video. Before you pause it, like and subscribe if you would. If not, do it afterwards. I would be really appreciative of it. It really helps the channel. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, we can see by the title, we're going to talk about Barlows. And I thought I would read a little bit out of the Levine's Guide, which is one of the industry... just one of the industry books that people go to for information. It's where I get most of my information. This is the second edition one. The first edition was 1985. I'm not sure when this was. The page had been ripped out at the back that gives you the date, but I think it was about 89. So it's fairly up to date as far as the Barlow collection that I want to have. And I like later ones obviously as well, but that's the ones that I'm sort of be looking for information for, or if I see one, is it worth me going for it? I love Barlows. My favourite pattern, without doubt, hands down, no arguments, my favourite pattern. I also like the rest of my collecting, this is a sub-branch of my collecting, Barlows, so I like to have as many different companies, different styles, I just love everything about the Barlow, and the wide, you can have a whole collection on Barlows and not collect anything else. I could do that quite easily. Be a very boring channel, but I could do that quite easily. But on my own, I think I have about 33 Barlows now. But I also have to keep up to date with the rest for a YouTube channel, so I can't just afford to fire out everything. But I like to buy them whenever I can of a good quality. But a Barlow is a Barlow. So I'm going to read just a little bit. There's only a couple of paragraphs here. This is the description of a modern Barlow. A modern Barlow knife is a regular jack. So let's stop there. What's a regular jack? Let's get the basic. This is a regular jackknife. So it's a knife that has a bolster and a bare end. It's just a regular jackknife. You have one or multiple blades coming from the one end. This one is a single blade, and I'm going to talk mostly about single blades today. So that is a jackknife that happens to have an easy open. So it's a regular jack is a sleeve board jack that is and has extra long bolsters and no cap bolsters. So the cap is this part here, and this is the main bolster. So this is a Barlow. So I'm going to put this up against a jack. There you can see the jack has a smaller bolster, no end cap, and the Barlow has a extended, I think that's the word they use, and I just want to get that right. The Barlow is a cheap, sturdy pattern intended for older boys. It's a bit of an old use of words, I think, because I think what they're talking about, young boys, probably pre-10, 11-year-old, and then above that was, because a lot of kids going back to the 16th century when knives were sort of invented, were going to work at 12, 13, some even younger. So the Barlow is a cheap, sturdy pattern intended for older boys. The long bolsters are usually iron, and they are most often stamped with a trademark. Now, yes, you can get that. This is not iron. This is just cheap stainless steel. This is a very basic Barlow, but it is a Barlow. Traditional Barlow handle scales are smooth, flat bone. Some are left natural, but most are dyed brown or red. Recent Barlows have plastic handles. Older deluxe Barlows had jigged bone, stag, and even pearl handles. Well, we demand now as users, jig bone and stag is quite a normal thing. You pay a little bit more for stag, but pearl is still that really high end. But jig bone is more normal now than sort of deluxe. There are two basic classes of Barlow. One class is standard Barlow, which is around 3 3/8. This one's exactly that. This is an Imperial Ireland, but this is just a bog standard cheap one, because I wanted to show you don't have to have, if you just want to collect Barlows, you can get, look at that there blade, but there's still enough to get an edge on it. And it's just something I keep in my collection. This is the turned over tops is just clipped on and then clipped on at the bottom, the scales. You can see that there, just clipped in. So very, very basic knife. And the other class is a daddy or granddaddy Barlows, usually 5 inches long. The usual baby Barlow is a low quality knife under 3 inches. I don't have any of them, but I do have the 5-inch granddaddy Barlow. And I just brought these out because they were both the same firm, and it was nice to get it out. Both made in Ireland. But you can get these made in England, America, all sorts of places across Europe, I believe, had used them. So there we go. Both standard and daddy Barlows can have a clip or a spear master blades. Both can either be single bladed or else have a pen second blade. Standard Barlows can also have a sheep's foot, spay or razor master blade. Daddy Barlows can have a fish scaler back on the fish scaler back on the master blade. So if this was the granddaddy Barlow, I'm sure you've seen them. The fish knives have the sort of rough back on it so that you can descale fishes with. That's what that is. The back. Or have a lock on a single blade. So there we go. That's even a lock on a Barlow, but a granddaddy Barlow. So why did the name get the nickname or the name Barlow? Well, it's really dead simple. This is old history, and you can't really get so much genuine history, I don't think, from around this time. But the Barlow was a family of Sheffield cutlers, prominent in the 17th and 18th century. The first well-known Barlow there was Edward Barlow. Now, I hear a lot of you saying, according to John Goins, who is another expert in the field, the original Barlow of Barlow knife fame was Obadiah Barlow, who started the business in 1667. It then went on to his grandson John, and then John Jr. Succeeded John in 1745. Their time as a family In their time, this family seemed to have an excluded use of the word Barlow. So up until 1745, that pattern and shape was just theirs. By itself, as a trademark on pocket knives, John Jr., the last in line of Barlows, died in 1798. Another branch of the family was represented by Samuel Barlow of Neep's End near Sheffield. His trademark in 1787 was a side-wedge Z with a small circle and a picture of a scimitar. After 1978, he added the word Barlow to his mark, and he worked until 1830s. So we've jumped on a bit there, but the first Barlow in the family who got recognition for his style and his high standards of knife making was Edward Barlow, which we don't hear a lot of, but he was the first who was elected Master of the Cutlers Guild in 1853. Now, the Cutlers Guild was a government-run thing that made sure that the Sheffield knife makers kept up to a standard. Much like you have in Soligen now, or you have in Italy, Lion Steel and all that conglomerate around there. This was the first time that knife makers were kept in check, that they were giving out quality. And that was in 1653. Now, funny enough, just to talk about that, this year I bought the anniversary of the Cutlers Guild. This is a Cutlers Guild. This is the anniversary. And as you can see here, it started in 1624 and went on to 2024, where it is still running. And they've just had a big show, and this knife was introduced. This is a Wolstenholme made from the Edgington factory, who make Wolstenholme knives. And this is the perfect Barlow. The right size, nice slim little Barlow, the extended bolster, and just a classic Barlow pattern. And there you go. There's a typical old-fashioned sort of Barlow. Well, it's not old-fashioned because, it's very similar to Case and Boker knives. I'll show them probably later on. So that was it. The only other thing that I'm going to say about Barlows is that the Barlow 3-inch curved regular from Smith Key, which was, it had integral bolsters and liners, spotted horn and fancy bolt. It was all fancy. I haven't got one of those. This is, I'll show you the picture down here. But what I have got, there we go. There you can see this here, this pattern here. What I have got now, this is a custom knife, which is not a Barlow, but it's that curved handle. You can see that there. So this would have been a Barlow, you know, with a curved handle, and you can see that the top one is meant to be the fancy pants one, and the bottom one's just a plain wood, which the one that I have is in ebony. So that's their definition in this book, which is, I'll just let you see, this is Levine's Guide to Knives and Their Values. Levine started in 1971 listing knives and, you know, working, finding information out about knives. And obviously by 1980, or from 1985, he made his first book, something very similar to the one that I just showed you there, except this one has gone on where he's done more about British makers, German makers, French makers. He has got more of the European knives in this, other than just all the American. And there's nothing wrong with all the American, but that was the way he done it. So what I've got here is a very simple, if you want to start collecting Barlows, I mean, you can pick these up for a couple of pound, and I mean a couple of pound. They are very basic, but I do like having it in my collection. I don't do anything with it. I haven't even sharpened them. I just have them in the collection because of the way they're constructed. I find that interesting. It's just clipped over. And then another thing that I wanted to put to bed, in all that reading about Barlows that Levine gives, it does not state what size the bolster has to be. It just has to be an extended bolster. And the one that gets me all the time, this is an arthurite bolster from an old English pattern. Exactly, it's been kept for years upon years. This is a Barlow. This is also an arthurite jackknife. So you can see that the Barlow has an extended bolster. Can you see that? I mean, that's why a lot of people say, well, that's not really a Barlow. It bloody is. It bloody is. It's got an extended Barlow than their normal jackknife. And this is their normal jackknife. So I just had to get that in because it bugs me every time. So that's not a Barlow. It's not long enough. It is. All it says in Levine's, who's an authority on knives, who's, you know, but there's a row of Barlows here and they're all different. They're all different sizes. Some are very similar. Like, you know, I was talking about this Wolstenholme. Here's a case. There you go. You can see the case Barlow. Incredibly similar. Case really went to town and copied that traditional pattern. Slim, lovely. They've got a nail neck. This one has a long pull, but that's just design. Also, if you look at Bowker Barlows, very much exactly the same. Instead of having a sort of flattened bolster, they have the more rounded bolster, which gives it a little bit more girth. But it's very, very similar as a pattern. Now, the reason I brought these all out, these are reasonably priced Barlows. They're what I call budget Barlows, so under £75. There's none of them that's in the 70s that I've got. Well, no, you could pay that for the Bowker Barlow. But my suggestion to anybody who wants to get in and they want a direction. People just say, I'm going to be a slip joint collector, but you do need a direction, no matter what pattern you pick. So I would always suggest starting cheap. Rough Rider, look at this, imitation tortoiseshell. Isn't that just beautiful? It is beautiful. It's a single-bladed Barlow. Got that really just beautiful standard Barlow. It's lovely. I mean, these are literally, you can pick them up for a couple of pounds second hand. And that's my biggest thing. Buy second hand. Don't buy new. If you can't afford it, don't rush to buy new. This is a fantastic knife. It's 440A steel. It's fine. Last you all day. And if it doesn't, like I always say, take one of these with you. It sharpens it in seconds. Or a bit of leather and strop it. It'll bring it back to get you through your day. Super little knife. Lovely shield and all. Lovely pinch bolsters, line bolsters. What you would pay in a more expensive knife. Now, sometimes a Rough Rider They're offline. This one's offline, as you can see, but it's not rubbing. It's not touching. And I can slap that up and down and it doesn't do it. Super little knife. And I'm going to go through these quickly. I don't want to keep you here all day. But there is a marbles knife. How beautiful is that? And that is checkered bone. And this is the same bone just been smoothed. The same as it is underneath to make it that pocket worn look. Lovely pinch bolsters, double lined. I got this for £10, second hand. It's got two blades. Now it's got the marble, it's got the match strike long neck on that one. And it also then has a little pen blade on the back of it. Beautiful little pen blade, super for all sorts of tasks. Again, £10 I paid for that. This one I paid more than that. This is the Rough Rider Reserve. I can't remember. Was it 60? I've no idea. But this is worth every penny too. This is a beautiful fat spear. I love a fat spear. As people know, the bulbous big fat spear just gets me going. Beautiful bolster, double ringed. Just a lovely pocket knife from Rough Rider Reserve. Perfect D2 steel. Just a gem. Lovely walk and talk. Couldn't, you know. But the next two are from a company that I would suggest that if you can get past the cheaper ones, if you want to go a little bit more, go to these. This is Rosecraft. Now they call this a jackknife. Rightly so. They can call it a jackknife. To me, it's a Barlow because that bolster is big enough to be called a Barlow in my eyes, just my eyes. But they're calling it a jackknife, but it goes in my Barlow collection. I'm sorry. I just love this knife. It is stunning. And again, these are in the 50s, mid 50s to high 50s, I think. And then the latest one they brought out, which has got the longer bolster, is their genuine Barlow. Look at the wood on this. This is as classic as you can get, but made in a modern way. Made in a modern way, and that's the big difference is you have a pin in here. They're not using this kick, which is normally used in Barlows. This is modern. They're using a pin across the bottom there. There you go. You can see that pin. Stops it hitting on the blade, so you get an excellent walk and talk. This is stunning. Stunning, stunning Barlow. All pin construction. Just stunning in D2 steel again. Super steel. So that's what I'm saying. Even on under 75, the case. I mean, you can buy these new in their 60s, but I mean, it's very hard to get the older case Barlows, especially single blades. Nobody wants to sell them. But they are super. And this little spear point one is just an example of an absolutely wonderful knife. A super knife. It has my edge on it, and it's just a perfect knife. Is it up the middle? Nah, but it's not touching. It is nowhere near touching. You have no marks on the tip of that at all. But it's off center, like a lot of cases are. But if it's not touching, I'm all right. Here's a George. This is a George Wolstenholme, isn't it? Yes, this is a George Wolstenholme. And this is their pattern, their standard pattern. If you want to see a Barlow from George Wolstenholme, this is it. I showed you the other one, this fancy dancy one that just came out. I think this one's probably 70s, 80s, somewhere around there. But it's beautiful and still in great condition. And I use this. It's not got half stops, but listen to that snap. Is it centered? As good as. And then probably the dearest one to get is the Boker Barlow. Now they do a basic one in Granilwood. I nearly got that out. Granilwood, but I mean you can buy them second hand. People are selling them second hand, right up the hey diddle diddle. Another very basic, very simple. There's no fancy belts, just a plain bolster, and you have the Boker shield on here. Some people like the shields on their Barlows. I'm either or. I quite like a nice shield. But this is another beautiful, very simple, very straightforward, very much that English type Barlow. Although Boker have been going for as many years probably. They've been going a long, long time. But it was a standard sort of pattern for a Barlow. And then last but not least, probably my favourite of all these Barlows. It's the Arthur Wright Listen to that. It's a bear trap. It's got the sexiest spear out. It's just a lovely, this is whiskey oak barrel, I think. Just beautiful in hand. It has a more bulbous end than, say, for instance, you put that against a case. It's slightly larger than the case. There's it down level. So it's slightly larger than a case, a much more bulbous end. This is a working knife. This is a pocket knife. You know, that's what that is. And I love carrying this because it'll do any job I need to do. No half stop. Beautiful closure. And right up the hey diddle diddle. And here's a modern one. You know, a modern Barlow. It's got a faux bolster. It's in G10. You can see that's that smooth G10 there. And then they have literally put beautiful lines in there and then a double lined bolster, as they call it. Now, this is screwed construction. And this is not something that I would collect. I have it in my collection because I just wanted to have a modern interpretation. This is still a slip joint. It's got a stop there, a 3/4 stop, and then into the main. Beautiful spear point. Absolutely stunning spear point. I think, what is this in? N690. So a nice stainless steel. I'll take the clip off this as soon as this is over, but it comes with a clip if you ever wanted to use it. But just a super knife. I'm really blown away with this one. It is a fantastic little knife, especially if you do want to have a clip for any particular circumstance. But lovely knife. And it's, I wouldn't put that with my Barlow collection. All these can go in my Barlow collection. But it is just a modern version, and you're getting to see an awful lot of these faux bolster, and they're calling them Barlows. But that's all right. It doesn't matter. It's just modern names put to old patterns. That's okay. And everything's all right when you buy a knife. It doesn't really matter where it's from, what it's called, as long as you've got an idea of why you're collecting them. And I do. I know that I love the heritage of the Barlow. I love the fact, you know, it was a family-run Sheffield company for over 100 years, running the family. That is just unheard of today. It doesn't happen very often. Not unheard of, but it doesn't happen very often. So I love that. I love all that history about it. Back to the 1600s, do we really know who made the first one? Haven't got a clue. There'd been no documentation then of it. So it is up in the air. But Obadiah was a knife maker. He didn't get credited for being a fantastic knife maker. He was just a knife maker because it was before the guild came in that would have structured what a knife maker had to do to get into that guild. And it was one of the distant grandchildren of the future. So there you go. That's my wrap on Barlows. But last and not least, I showed you this is the Arthur Wright Barlow. And this is the Arthur Wright, just a normal jackknife. Well, now you can also get this with an extended bolster, and this is an Ashley Harrison custom. Works for the same company, makes these knives, but he also does this in his custom side, and with an extended bolster and with his maker mark on it. This is my hottest slip joint knife. I love this knife. So they're changing all the time. Everything's changing. Their knives. Do you know what I mean? Everything's changing. But sometimes it's nice just to have a little bit of history. I hope I covered it in more detail than maybe I would normally do. The Levine's Guide to Knives and Their Values. The values doesn't interest me, but it lets me find out about knives in my basic way of research. I don't do a lot of research. There you go, Paddy's away, 24 minutes. Sorry I went on. I probably tried to rush the reading a bit much. Sorry about that. But you can read it yourself. Just turn the noise of me off and read it from the book. And it makes it very clear. And I hope that these other knives that I threw in have been of some sort of assistance in breaking it down. So there you go. Take care. Bye-bye now.